Hello, in our last video we looked at how to come up with a premise for your narrative writing. Now let's look at how to structure it. Structure is very important because it's how we tell a story, and the mark scheme reflects its importance. So if we have a look at the top band on the mark scheme under organisation, it says varied and inventive use of structural features. The writing is compelling, incorporating a range of convincing and complex ideas, and fluently linked paragraphs with seamlessly integrated discourse markers. So what we include and the order in which we include them is very, very important to our mark. So the important thing for us is to look at, well, how do we make varied and inventive use of structural features? How do we make sure that we organise our writing in a compelling way and that our ideas are convincing and complex? So let's make a list of the things you can do in your writing to make sure you are hitting that criteria. First of all, you can provide a description of a setting which creates a powerful mood and atmosphere. That's a varied and inventive use of structural features. Then you can introduce a protagonist, a character which has a need that is compelling, because we like stories about a character who needs something and then go on a journey to get it. Once we've introduced a setting and created an atmosphere, once we've introduced a character with a need, we can introduce some tension. Something happens which is going to prevent our protagonist from having their need met. It's going to present a challenge to them in some way. This is a compelling use of structure. Somewhere in our story, probably at the beginning and again at the end, we're going to use a central motif, a symbol which we repeat, which represents our character's struggle. This makes our writing convincing and complex. Our protagonist is going to be met with this challenge, and then they are going to react to it in a way which is realistic, like real people actually react. And this is going to make your writing convincing. And once we've done all that, we're going to return to some of the descriptions from the beginning of the story, and this is called a circular narrative. It returns to the imagery and motifs at the beginning to remind the reader of the themes and to produce a satisfying ending, which is, well, it's what the examiner would call varied and inventive. So this leaves us with a bunch of techniques we can include in our narrative writing to make sure that it is structured in a convincing and compelling way, and it is varied and inventive. And when we put them all together and put them in a list, a sort of structure and order emerges. A description of setting, introducing a character, making something happen which introduces tension or a challenge, the character's reaction, and then a return to the imagery and motifs at the beginning. And in among all that, we're going to use a central motif which represents the character's struggle. And so we have a plan, don't we? And the beauty of this plan is it takes us back to what we were talking about in the last video, that the best stories are journeys, either a physical or a psychological journey, or both. We've gone through that very quickly, so let's work through a couple of examples to give you an idea of how you might use this plan. Okay, so this is the type of idea that many students have, and it's perfectly okay. We have students who like war stories, who like action stories, or who like crime stories. They like to think about characters they've seen in films or in video games, and that's all fine. So let's talk about how we take an idea like that and turn it into a piece of top band narrative writing. So here we go. A sniper is preparing to carry out an assassination. This is the first idea you might have. So let's bang that into shape. So let's start by introducing this character. He is a sniper. He's staring through his scope on his rifle and he's identifying his target. And so anyone who reads that paragraph you're going to write is going to know that this is a sniper and his need is to complete his mission and to take some poor guy out. Now let's introduce a setting. Where is he? Well, let's put him in the jungle. He's in some sort of war. He's hiding in a tree and he's looking at his enemy. This jungle is uncomfortable. It's steamy and thick and it's humming with insects. And this to me sort of symbolizes the combat that is going on in his mind. So let's introduce a tension. Let's introduce a problem which is going to provide a challenge to him completing his mission. When he sees his target through his scope, it reminds him of his father. And so how might our sniper react to that? Well, he'd react like most human beings do. Perhaps he would recall something from his childhood about his father. In this case, we need to make a decision. He remembers his father reading to him as a child. So this is then going to produce an outcome. Does he do anything differently? Knowing that this man he's going to kill reminds him of his father. Well, what would a trained killer do? What would an assassin do? So he returns to the scope. He puts his finger on the trigger, and we don't know. Is he going to miss on purpose? Is he going to get up and walk away, or is he going to shoot the guy anyway? And let's leave that open. However, let's return now using this circular narrative technique to this jungle, which represents his conscience and his guilt and the difficulty of his mission. And let's leave it open. Let's leave it, open in the air as to whether he carries out his hit or not. And so now we've decided on our story, let's make sure that we've shown the examiner that we can be inventive with structure. And so we're going to include a motif that is going to represent his guilt and his conscience and the challenge to his mission. And let's use a symbol. Let's use a mosquito buzzing loudly in his ear. I'm going to describe that at the beginning of the story and again at the end to represent his conscience. Okay, so what we've done is we've started with a very, very simple idea, something we want to write about. Oh, I want to write a story about a sniper and he's going to be taking some guy out. It's a great idea. But how are we going to then tell that story in an interesting, compelling and convincing way? Well, we're imagining, aren't we, that this sniper has a crisis of conscience. Something happens which is going to get him to question his way of life and his mission. In this case, the man he's going to kill reminds him of his father. Now, if you were to write those 5 parts, if you were to do it well, then there's no reason why you couldn't get top marks on a piece of original writing. Let's have a look at another example. Okay, so let's look at an example of something else that students often like to write about. A girl is being bullied at school. This is a very popular idea with students because it's something that's familiar to them and they know they need to write about a character in crisis, and a kid who's being bullied is a character in crisis. It's a great idea. So how are we going to use this structure to turn this into a convincing and compelling story? Well, let's see her at her dressing table, getting ready for school in the morning, putting on thick makeup because she's bullied about her appearance, so she is putting on makeup to try and make sure the bullies won't pick on her today. The dressing table in her room where she's preparing for school, she's doing her hair and doing her makeup. It's full of photos and keepsakes from childhood. And to me, this represents how before she was bullied, she was a successful and confident and perhaps more innocent child who's now having to realize how horrible life is as you get older. So something needs to happen, which is going to lead to a crisis. And so she's in the middle of putting her makeup on and her phone buzzes and she gets a message from the bullies insulting her, telling her how ugly she is and calling her names. So think realistically, if that was to happen to a person, how would they react? Well, in this case, she cries. And all the makeup that she's put on is ruined because her tears make it all run down her face. But in doing so, she makes a decision. She decides that she's not going to hide anymore, and she wipes all her makeup off. And so she's been on a very minor journey, but a very important psychological journey. She's decided that she isn't going to try and fit in with the bullies anymore. She's going to be her own person. And so maybe the narrative will return then to this description of her dressing table and the photos and the souvenirs and keepsakes that she has, which reminds her of a time when she was happy and confident and successful. In my mind, I imagine that this is a girl who loves horses, and there's a particular photo of her when she was younger with her horse, because horses are loving and faithful and loyal and trustworthy, and she's smiling because she's won a competition. And so this is a very, very powerful motif, a reminder of when she was happy, which we could have at the beginning of this piece of work and again at the end. So once again, we've started with a very, very simple idea and then a applied a structure to it, which is going to have our character go on an important journey. Okay, so I hope you have found this useful, and it's time for you to go away and come up with some brilliant ideas and plan a structure to them, which is going to get you a really good mark in your narrative writing. See you next time.